So I work in our customer service and support organization. At Microsoft Support, we support everything from quantum computing and Azure all the way down to Surface devices. I am here at a team called Showcase, which is actually right behind me, where we take real support cases. We're going to share with you a bit today around how Microsoft Support became an AI-powered support organization, everything we did right and the benefits we've seen from that. I will also include some of the mistakes we made so that you can learn from them as well. And I'm very excited to be joined by Arielle, who is a support engineer on the team specializing in Office. Arielle, if you'd like to say hi, take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. Like you said, my name is Arielle. I'm a support engineer. So part of my day-to-day is actually to take customer cases. Later on in the call, I'll be taking you through a little bit about my day-to-day and how Copilot helps me in my workflows. But it's nice to meet you. I'll pass it back to Steve.
Well, okay. Well, we'll start with size and scale. So it may not surprise you to learn that Microsoft support is quite large. We have 35,000 what we call support engineers. You probably have heard that word now 3 times on this call. So let's get on the same page. I used to tell people we had 35,000 agents, but our marketing team has started to call the AI bots agents, which is getting confusing. And so moving forward, if I use the word support engineer, I am referring to a flesh and blood human being who takes support cases. If I use the word agent, I am referring to an AI bot that may also take support cases. Hopefully that works for everyone. Of those 35,000 support engineers, about 10,000 are Microsoft full-time employees, and then we have 25,000 across 92 contact centers around the world. If you're curious, our consumer global English teams are primarily located in the Philippines, India, and Nicaragua. Just kind of depends on the time of day you're calling in. We do support 62 different languages, and we take 326 million contacts per year. And I define a contact as anytime a human is talking to another human across phone, email, or chat channels. And again, this is everything from quantum computing, Azure, all the way down to your kid getting your credit card, buying a bunch of Fortnite V-Bucks, then you call me asking for a refund. I wish I was kidding. A lot of cases like that. New Fortnite season started last week. We see a spike every 4 months of those Fortnite tickets. Now, Microsoft support, like I said, it's large, and Microsoft makes support technology. We make CRMs like Dynamics. So you may have assumed that Microsoft support has used Microsoft Dynamics since the dawn of time. No, in 2019, we actually had 16 different CRM systems with 500 different tools. We used a third-party platform for phone, Genesis, if you're familiar with the platform. And if that sounds chaotic, managing 16 different CRM systems, yeah, it was. Imagine transferring a case and having to re-enter all of the customer information into a new CRM system. It just wasn't ideal. And so in 2020, we remembered that we do, in fact, make a CRM system. And so we decided to move all of Microsoft support onto one platform. We chose Dynamics. It did take us 2 years, but by 2022, every single Microsoft engagement that involves Microsoft working with an external customer, consumer, commercial, or anything in between, it's all happening on Dynamics. The benefits there are, I think, fairly obvious, right? All of your data is in one place. It allows me to do universal skilling, so I can have Arielle take many different types of cases with just a little simple toggle in the back end. But it's also made transfers much, much easier, right? Now it's all happening in one system. There's no moving things around or changing categorization. In 2022 is when we started doing AI, and we started with intelligent routing. One of the oldest problems we had was deterministic routing. We're asking customers to tell us what their problem is, but many times they do not understand what their problem is. And so how can we use an intent agent to determine what they need and get them to the right place based upon what they're saying? And so today, if you call 1-800-Microsoft, an AI agent will ask you an open-ended question. Hey, customer, please describe your issue. The customer is then free to define their issue across 62 different languages based on what they understand. The system will determine their intent and route them to the right team. So an example, this was a real one I heard recently. A customer calls in saying, hey, I have a Surface laptop running Windows 11 and Call of Duty, the video game, is crashing. The system hears 3 different keywords there: Windows, Surface, Call of Duty, but it understands the video game crashing as the core issue, and it routes over to the Xbox queue. Now, that may sound obvious, but consider for a moment, there's no Xbox in front of the customer. They're using a Windows PC, playing a Windows game. They may assume they need Windows support. But we use our Xbox team to support Windows gaming cases. I don't need you to know or care about that. I just need to get the case to the right place. And so by using this intelligent routing model, we've reduced our misroutes by 20%. You'll recall I'm getting hundreds of millions of cases per year, so a 20% reduction is very substantial, right? And we did this by using this intelligent routing model that we fed transcripts to. We gave it access to 5% of our call transcripts. We categorized those transcripts by root cause, so the model could start to understand the correct and creatively incorrect ways customers can describe their issues, and that's how we were able to achieve that 20% reduction. Today, this model can see 100% of our calls, and it's continuously adding new intents and learning new issues and routing directions every day as new issues emerge. Embedded within that is a conversational chatbot that can do some troubleshooting to help resolve some of our customer issues before they get to a human. This has been very effective for us. 91% of our calls are actually serviced by this AI agent. I'll share with you a recording of what that looks like. Then in 2023, we move into the generative copilot era. How can we use copilots to reduce toil for our human support engineers as they're working through cases? There are so many things that can take extra time on cases. For example, a case gets transferred and we put the customer on hold for 30 minutes while we review everything that happened on the case up till now. Having a summarization provide that information up front so we can work on the customer's issue faster is helpful. Email generation has been incredibly useful for us. There was a very small news story last year. You probably didn't hear about it. It was really small. CrowdStrike, right? Very small. Totally wasn't our fault. Well, CrowdStrike was a global outage, and we had 5,000 support engineers working 8,000 extra shifts while the world was on fire and planes weren't able to take off. And so you can imagine in a scenario like that, everyone is constantly asking you for updates. What's going on with my case? What's going on with this issue? How do we resolve it? And the time support engineers like Arielle spend talking about the problem is time they're not spending fixing the problem. And so having an AI model that has access to the latest customer-facing information, has access to the case, and can give empathetic statements means that we can press a button and get the right information to the customer quicker so Arielle can spend more time on the fixing, not on the talking about the fixing. And then finally, Answer Assist, being able to answer questions based off of our knowledge repository. We will show you how well that's working today, and Arielle will tell you about how poorly it worked initially and how we cleaned it up to make it work better. And then today and into tomorrow, we've entered the agentic era of AI. I'm confident I'm the very first Microsoft person to say the word agentic in front of you, right? It's a rare honor. Thank you. But we have, I know I'm not the first. We have 4 AI agents in our ecosystem that can do autonomous tasks for us. These are things like create new knowledge articles based off of the context of completed cases, or do a quality review of a case autonomously so we can find opportunities to teach, coach, and make our support better. And so I'm going to shift gears into demos. I'll show you a little bit of everything. Arielle will be showing you some of this in production. And I want you to keep in mind, this is interactive. And so I know I'm heavily caffeinated and chatty, but if you want to unmute and ask a question, you're more than welcome to. If you prefer to drop something into the chat, Arielle and I will be monitoring the chat, and we're happy to address your questions there as well. So we'll dive right in. I mentioned that we have a conversational bot that can help our customers work through issues. I actually have a recording of this. This is a real customer who has a Microsoft Surface device. I cannot see what devices you're using right now, but I'll assume you all have the latest Surface Pro 11. Definitely appreciate that. But in this case, he's got an issue. He's pressing the power button, but nothing's happening. It's a black screen. And so he calls 1-800-Microsoft. The system asks for his consent to attempt some autonomous troubleshooting. And what you're about to hear is what happened next. I want to be clear, this is not a fake demo. This is an actual real customer recording that we've captured. So let's see how that goes. Jeffrey, the audio should work, but if it doesn't, please let me know and we can fix live.
Please tell me a bit more about the issue you are experiencing with your device.
Black screen, no power.
Okay, does your device power on?
No.
I can help you troubleshoot your power issue on this call. Would you like that?
Yes.
Okay, let's get started. Is your device currently plugged into a power outlet?
Yes.
Okay, next, is the tip of your charging cable lit?
Repeat.
Is the light glowing on the tip of your charging cable?
Yes.
A pause for a moment. The eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that she used different words when he asked her to repeat. Now I am very, very aware that she sounds quite robotic. And it's true, we could, if we wanted to, make her sound more human. The product group actually showed me a demo recently where I can upload a sample of my voice and make her sound like me. Now, in my head, I think I sound really cool, but I've listened to recordings of myself speak and I realize what I'm subjecting you all to. No one wants that, right? There's this quote from Jurassic Park, we were so focused on what you could do, you didn't stop and think about what you should do. And in this case, even though we could make it sound human, we do not want to deceive our customers. So this robotic voice is a very deliberate design decision, but it is a real conversational AI. Just like a human, if I were to ask you to repeat yourself, you may choose to use different words. So too does this. So this was built in Copilot Studio. It sits on top of our IVR. We use Azure Communication Services at Microsoft. This was built by 2 engineers over the course of 4 weeks, and then it was deployed globally across 62 different languages. It sits on top of our existing troubleshooting documentation for Surface, which is actually public facing. You can find on support.microsoft.com. And so, the step 1, is it plugged in? Step 2, so on and so forth. She's able to follow that, but she has freedom in how she words those steps, contextual to the natural flow of the conversation. So with all that in mind, let's see if she can actually solve the problem.
Hold down the power button until you see the logo screen. This will force a restart and may take up to 20 seconds. I'll give you a chance to do that now, and we'll check back with you in a bit. Just let me know at any time when you have completed this step.
So she meant what she said there. She's actually going to check in on her own. He's not going to say anything. And so this is not a call and response bot. It's staying in control of the engagement,
Have you completed the power cycle
just like you
step
expect a
all
human
the way until the logo appeared?
Yes.
Okay, did this help to resolve your power issue?
Yes.
Great, I'm glad I was able to help resolve your issue. Thanks for calling Microsoft.
You can really feel the joy in his soul there with that problem being solved, right? Folks, support's a thankless job, but it was able to resolve the issue. And that, yeah, I see that quote in the chat. I get that quote a lot. Who was the real robot here, right? Feel bad for this guy. But keep in mind that that was a basic problem. A hard reset, hold the power button down, it gets back on. And in the before experience, he would be waiting on hold to get to a human, and the human's going to tell him to hold that button down. It's embarrassing for the customer, but consider my support engineers. Arielle is capable of doing much more than telling customers to hold buttons down, right? In fact, this problem is so common. I used to work at the Microsoft stores. I would have customers drive all the way to the Microsoft store, walk up to the answer desk, and while they're yelling at me about their Surface not working, I've been holding the power button down. So I'll tap it, spin it around, and now it's working. And while that's funny, they drove all the way to me for something that we could have just given to them right away through this. And so this is a better experience, and there's a lot happening behind the scenes here. This is more complex than it seems. First, there's a sentiment engine running that's tracking the tone of the customer as well as the words they're using. And so if he starts to sound frustrated or starts to use some particularly spicy language, the system will recognize that and just push him directly to a human being. We can actually track changes in sentiment over the duration of the call. And so we can see in the data that step 3 makes customers happy, step 4 really stresses them out, which is pretty cool. I mentioned it works across 62 different languages. It can switch language mid-conversation. And so if he suddenly starts speaking in Spanish, she'll recognize that and also switch to Spanish. The underlying tech is always English. The translation happens one layer over that, but it works quite well for us. And finally, intents. It's tracking and learning from each customer interaction. What kind of questions do customers ask? What kind of answers are most effective? We do have those 2 engineers kind of manage those intents, so she doesn't get too kind of off script. But it kind of shows how this can learn and grow over time. Now, while that is a simple example, the impact is crazy. We've seen a 42% improvement in our self-help. And I mentioned that we contain 91% of our calls through this IVR. I don't expect you to take my word for that, so I pulled the numbers. We've seen consistently all year that green bar is our total volume of phone. We get a lot of phone calls. Purple are how many are handled in the IVR, and then the blue were how many needed to be transferred to a human. And so yeah, this is simple, but we are saving a lot of money. And when you consider this was 2 people who did this, that's great. It's encouraging to know that customers are willing to engage with this agent, which is really nice. And I think the impact speaks for itself. Now, that's a basic example. I'll give you a more complicated one. Folks, this masterclass here is a safe space. Has anyone forgotten a password before? And I see the chat, by the way. I will go over customer satisfaction here shortly, so stay tuned. I got a punchline coming. But if anyone has forgotten a password before, right? It's okay. You can tell me. You probably know the process. When you created that account, let's say it was a Netflix account, you gave it a recovery email or a recovery password. So you forget your password. You get a link on your cell phone. You click the link. You make a new password. Everyone's happy. Well, the problem with Microsoft is many of you made your Microsoft accounts 15, 20 years ago. You've long since changed your email address, you've changed your phone number, and you ignored all of the pop-ups we gave you in Windows 11 to update your recovery info. Now you've forgotten your password. How do you get the recovery link? And so we have a process called the Microsoft Account Recovery Form. Basically, we ask a customer a bunch of very specific questions to confirm beyond a reasonable doubt that they are who they said they are. And this represents about 4.6 cases per month. That is more cases than the population of Los Angeles every single month of customers filling out a form and humans reviewing it. I think I saw a hand come up and down. Was there a question? Nope. Okay. Well, what that form looks like, if you're curious, is we have the expected inputs, we have what the customer put down, and then we kind of go row by row and determine if the customer's guess was close enough or not. Obviously, we have for many years been trying to automate this. We have successfully, through the use of dumb bots, been able to automate on average about 4 million cases per month. Because the customers have freedom in how they're filling out this form, 600,000 of those cases have required human review every single month, and it cost me 25 cents per human to sit down and review the customer inputs against the expected inputs. What's cool about AI is it can make the same human level determination as our human reviewers. And so as of about 2 months ago, I've achieved a 90% automation on those remaining 600,000 cases, meaning that now I only need to have humans review 60,000, and the cost benefits there are incredible. Just because I work for Microsoft does not mean I get a discount on AI tokens. I have to pay the same price you do. And so it's 4 cents per AI form review, but that's compared to 25 cents for the humans to do it. And so for those of you following along in napkin math, you'll see I'm saving a little over $1 million a year on this. Now that's great, and I'm sure our accountants love that, but what I care about is this middle box, the average handle time improvement. Imagine you're locked out of your OneDrive account. You can't access your puppy pictures, and I tell you it's going to take 12 hours for me to let you know if you're getting back in or not. You are probably not a happy customer. So a 31-second turnaround time to let customers know if they're back in or to give them the hard message they need to hear sooner. That's just a demonstrably better customer support experience. And this is an example of a highly procedural escalation, and Copilot works very well with procedure because it knows the rules of engagement. It also shares a degree of trust. Customer PII, this is something where if I mess it up once, it makes the news, right? And so the fact that it's working this well and we can trust it, I think is quite encouraging. So I'm going to switch gears here away from automation and back into the realm of humans. Contrary to what it might seem, our ambition at Microsoft is not to replace all of our humans with bots. There are some cases that simply require a human touch. If your server's down and you're losing $1 million per hour, do you want to talk to Copilot or do you want to talk to Arielle? You just met her, but I promise you would prefer Arielle. And so how can we use Copilots to optimize the work she's doing, make it a bit better? She's going to share with you how Ask a Question, which is a feature that allows us to use our knowledge base repository to help with the research stage of casework, how we were able to train that and make that more effective over time. And she will demonstrate how we've hit some of these KPIs I'm putting on the screen. We've seen a 12 to 16% reduction in average handle time for chat cases. We've increased the amount of cases we're taking by 9 to 12%. And most importantly, we've decreased the amount of peer assistance required on a case by 13%, which means that we don't have to run around the floor asking for help. We're saving time on escalations. And we've seen that play out in time to proficiency. At Microsoft, we define proficiency as how long it takes for a new support engineer to be able to take 10 cases back to back with no additional assistance. That used to be 90 days. Today, we're averaging about 55 days. I want to be clear, Copilot does not replace the training period. We still want our support engineers to know how all this works, but it helps during that nesting period where they're taking their cases for the first time. It's the Copilot helping them work through it. In terms of cost savings, we've done a bit of a headcount reduction. So we used to have 45,000 support engineers. We're now sitting at 35,000. With that, we've seen about $500 million in support cost saves for FY25. $500 million, even for Microsoft, is a lot of money. And so we're happy to see that. But again, what I'm proud of is customer satisfaction. I fight tooth and nail for single-digit increases in our satisfaction scores. We've seen an increase on average of 12% across the board in CSAT. At Microsoft, we do post-case surveys. You may have seen this before, so it's like a 5-star survey. We used to shoot for about a 4.6 out of 5. We're now shooting for a 4.8 out of 5 because we've seen that improvement. And that's not a surprise. As much as I wish people like to call and ask how I'm doing, customers do not want to talk to us. If we're solving their problems faster, they tend to be happier, and I've seen that at scale. And so with that out of the way, I know at Microsoft, by law, we have to start with PowerPoint, but you are not here to see PowerPoints. You're here to see what this tech looks like. So I'm happy at last to hand over to Arielle. She's going to show you her in-production Dynamics environment, exact same environment she uses to work through cases, and kind of demonstrate how we use some of these features. She will start with some generative features, and then she's going to shift over into some of the new agentic features, and then we'll work on closing out the session. So Arielle, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Steve. So like I mentioned before, I'm a support engineer. So my day-to-day is to take cases, and I'm taking you through my live environment. So on the screen is Dynamics 365, our case management software. We make it and we use it internally here at Microsoft. And then also, just to make things crystal clear, this is the support rep's view. This is how I communicate with my customers. All chats, emails, phone calls come through this platform, and these are how our support reps are communicating with their customers. The generative features I'm going to show off are specifically designed to empower our support reps to support their customers. So unlike some of the features that Steve showed, these are not actually ever going to communicate directly with the customer or interact with them. These are specifically to help me in my workflows and tasks and empower me. We're starting back in the generative features we released in 2022, 2023, and I'm going to show you what we've been using for a while, how we got our model to where it is today, and then we're going to end with some of the newer agentic features that are just being released. So we're on a live case view here. It's an Excel crashing issue. For the sake of the demo, there is no actual customer data attached to this one, but this is what this screen looks like. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is case summary. It's here at the top of every case, and this is very self-explanatory. It's going to do exactly what it says. It summarizes the case in an easy-to-follow format here. This is pulling from all of the information stored in the case, so it could be chat transcripts, it could be phone transcripts, emails, internal notes between support reps, anything like that. If Copilot can see it, it can summarize it in one easy to follow format. It breaks it out in a couple of different categories: symptom, deliverable, troubleshooting, cause and resolution. Easy to follow along with. It also pulls in related cases. So in this case, it was actually, I had to consult with my escalation team to interpret some crash logs. I'm able to see all of that in the same case summary, and that saves me some time right there. I like to spend a little bit of time about this one, even though it seems so simple and so easy. Don't count it out. This is one of the easiest features to release. It's actually just a checkbox. It doesn't require a lot of training or tweaking because summarization is something that AI already does really well. And then also the time savings are evident. For me in my workflows, this is very, very helpful in transfers. So when I actually get a transfer, it's a live customer and I don't get to talk to the last support rep at all. They're already onto their next case. And I just have to frantically get caught up on the transcripts and try to jump in where they left off. Now, case summary can really help me pick up where the last agent left off. It's actually a live feature. If I click on regenerate, it will look for new information in the timeline. I can generate it halfway through an interaction, halfway through a chat, and it's going to regenerate the summary. And this is really nice too in terms of documentation and case notes. So another thing at the end of every case is I'm expected to document what went on between me and the customer. I think I can speak for a lot of support reps when I say this is the least favorite part of our job. I do not like documentation. I'd rather be prioritizing my live customers over documentation. And then now we're using this to repurpose and help us write our case notes. And it's also a bar raiser across the company because this might be a relatable experience, but I've seen a lot of case notes that might be bullet point 1, Excel was crashing, bullet point 2, issue resolved. That's all you get. this is a bar raiser across the company, because now if this is the worst case notes that you can see for a case, it's already better than what it was before. So raising the bar across the company in that way. It's also a great feature if you're just trying to get support reps' feet wet, gain some trust as well, because it works really well straight off the bat, because it doesn't require training or a lot of work from the support reps. It's a great way to show evident time savings, and then get buy-in and trust just in general for AI tools when you're starting to release some of the other features that do require a little bit more work and then may not behave perfectly straight off the bat. I mean, that's actually a perfect segue, because the next feature I'm going to show off is Answer Assist. It pops out here on the side, and this is what it looks like. If you've used any AI solution, this should look pretty familiar, right? I ask a prompt to Copilot, and it searches our database and returns a response. What's special about this version is that it has access to all of our troubleshooting documentation on the back end. So this is procedural internal articles. This is all of our troubleshooting articles that we also release to customers, but it's basically just all of the resources that I would normally have to manually sort through when supporting my customer. And this is what it looks like. Before I actually even type a prompt, you can see it's generated what we call an insight. It has access to my case, and the most recent action is the customer asking about closing a Microsoft account after we've solved the Excel crashing issue. If I click on Accept Insight, you can see in blue, this is the prompt it's generated. Can I reopen a closed Microsoft account later? And then in white, this is what it's pulled from our documentation. Here you could see it's concise and nicely written. If I wanted to, I could send this to my customer, repurpose it in messages, or if I'm talking to a customer on the phone, I could be reading it out to them. If I click on check sources, Copilot will tell me exactly where it got it from, right? So it's always going to be pulling from our documentation. And here's just one of the many examples of the troubleshooting guides we have on the back end. In this case, it's a customer facing article, but this is what this looks like. It's found the article, it's parsed it, and it's pulled out what's relevant to my question automatically. But what's nice is I didn't even need to leave my tool. Before this, we would use a search engine, which was kind of a clunky experience. We have a lot of documentation, and knowing the right keywords to use was difficult, much less sorting through pages and pages of search results. And then I would have to be opening multiple articles in a new tab to support my customer. And that research alone takes a lot of time. I really like this tool because it allows me to stay on the same screen and it does all that work for me. I'll actually show you an example of a different prompt that I can use. That one was kind of using it like a search engine. This one's more of like a troubleshooting, helping me with troubleshooting. So I've asked how to add Gmail to the Outlook desktop app, and you can see it pulls from our documentation, the steps on how to do that, and it's in a nicely written format. Again, I can copy and paste this over to my customer. I can also edit it directly in this box if I want to make any changes. But let's just say that I like it. This is really nice. And this is actually a use case that I use it for. It's not that I don't know how to do this. It's that this takes a lot of time to type. I'm primarily a chat agent. And a lot of times our support reps are on 2 chats at once. So every second I'm spent typing messages to a customer. That's time they're just waiting, staring at a blank screen. And if I'm being honest, if I typed this message from scratch, it would not look this nice. Normally I'm sending one step at a time because I just don't have time to type the entire thing before my customer gets a little bit pissed off by the wait time. So that's really nice. Copilot's also predicting what questions I might ask next, and it really kind of helps guide the troubleshooting process. So it's predicting, oh, if those steps don't work, the next question to ask is the advanced steps for IMAP. And then if I was a newer rep, I may not even know that that's the question I need to ask, but it's nice that it's guiding me through that flow. And then this is another example of a use case that I would use it for. These numbers change based on the email, Yahoo, Gmail, Outlook. I don't have them memorized. So this is something that I'm having to look up frequently, wasting a few minutes doing that. And it's nice that Copilot can just pull it from me or pull it for me and save me time. Same deal. If I click on check sources, it's telling me exactly where it's getting it from. It can consolidate multiple articles in the same message, which also has an edge over a search engine. If I'm using 2 or 3 articles, I'm going to have to open those up in new tabs and toggle between them. And that saves me some time there. But that's really nice. I want to also draw your attention to these thumbs up and thumbs down icons. Because like I mentioned before, the feature, like case summary does really well straight off the bat. It's the features that rely on the database that you have to do a little bit more work on. And that's because it very much depends on your documentation and your database and where it's at. And then one thing that we relied really heavily on was actually our direct support rep feedback, because it's the people who've been sitting in the seat for 10 years, 10, 15 years that can tell you and look at a response like this and tell you this is good, this is bad, and this is what needs to change about it. So all of our features have a thumbs up and thumbs down icon here. And this is available to all of our reps at all of our sites across the world. And this is where we're encouraging feedback, basically. So if we like a response, obviously you can thumbs it up, you can see it submits feedback to the team. But what we're really interested in is if we didn't like the response for any reason, we can thumbs it down and it opens up this comment box. And this is where we can tell the team why we didn't like the response. I know your next logical question is, what do the numbers look like on this? And I'm so glad you asked, because here they are. So jumping back to when we first released these features, we just flipped the switch, turned it on, and see what would happen. You can see all of our Copilot features are actually only sitting at a 61% thumbs up rate. Case summary, a little bit different. It doesn't rely on that database. It was sitting at a 90% thumbs up rate, and that's another reason why I suggest if you're just starting out, summarization is a great place to start because it performs really well straight off the bat. If we fast forward to March of 2025, about a year and a half later, all of our Copilot features were sitting at a 93% thumbs up rate, case summary at a 98% thumbs up rate. So Steve and I are not sitting in front of you here to tell you that it's perfect. Our support reps loved it. It worked well straight off the bat. No, that's not the story. We did have to do a lot of work, but what we're happy to report and what's powerful about this is the improvement. The numbers are actually a little bit higher now, but I call out this time point in particular because I want to show how fast we were able to get the model to proficiency. And then that's another reason why we're excited to talk to you today, because we want to share what we did and how we got to where we are. So we focused on three main things, and these are the things that we owe that improvement to. So the first one is knowledge cleanup. I talk about the database a lot, and that's a huge piece because we learned the hard way that garbage in, garbage out. We had not been doing our due diligence as Microsoft in updating our database. Over the past 10 years, there was a lot of stuff in there, like frankly garbage, stuff that was no longer relevant, needed to be retired, and just had not been cleaned up over the past 10 years. And we learned that the hard way, because if you ingest it into an AI model, it's going to treat everything as current and pull from it equally, versus when our support reps were using a search engine, naturally, they're not going to go to the 18th page of the search results and look through those articles. So we hadn't been doing our work in that way in cleaning out those stuff that didn't need to be in there anymore. So we did a massive effort. It took about 8 months, the initial effort, and we reduced our knowledge base down from 1 million knowledge articles down to about 400,000. So very big reduction, over a half. And this just was retiring articles, archiving things, also consolidating articles, and then reformatting certain articles to make sure that they were AI ready. And then that is a big portion of the improvement journey. The second thing that we focused on was training. So just because a support rep gave the thumbs down, it doesn't always necessarily mean that it's the model's fault, right? It could be that the support rep didn't know how to interact with the tool. They didn't know how to generate a proper prompt. We found this was the case, especially at the beginning when AI was new. A lot of our support reps were just using it like a search engine. They were typing in random keywords, and we know that that doesn't work very well. It works better if you literally just talk to it like a human. So focusing some efforts on creating some modules and some events to get the support reps to gain confidence in using the tool. I actually have some screenshots of what this looks like. So here's one of the modules that we released. I've taken this myself. You can see it's fun. We gamified it. We call it Be an Expert Core Edition, and it goes through how to use the tool, how to generate a proper prompt. And at the end, there's some quizzes, right? So it gives you a technical troubleshooting scenario and then has you select which prompt to use. I'll give you a spoiler. The bottom one with more details is the more correct one. Copilot's going to be able to give you a more personalized response based on that prompt. Another thing that we did was we created an event called Spark Weeks, where we flew out to some of these support sites and created an event. We took support reps out of the queues, which is already exciting, you know, a little bit of break from cases, but we had them stand on stage in front of each other. We picked out what we call Copilot champions, people who were excited about that tool, and we gave them the task of driving that excitement in their peers. So on the stage, we'd say, like, what do you use Copilot for? Give us some examples of some prompts or some cases that you used Copilot in. And that really helped drive excitement, and then again, confidence in the tool. And it's also really different hearing it from a peer. It's because the alternative is trying to drive compliance down the leadership chain, and that's really different. It's hard to hear coming 6 levels above you, use this tool, it's going to make your job easier. There's not a lot of trust there, but if you hear it from someone who you sit next to, who you already go to ask your questions, use this tool. Like I used it the other day and it made my case easier. Like I'm going to listen to that, I'm going to trust that. And we found that kind of that grassroots approach really helped drive adoption in our support reps, drive confidence and trust around the tool as well. And then that kind of ties into the last point. So the feedback loop, the thumbs up and thumbs down feedback icons, that was very, very important. So like I said, the people who have been doing the job for a long time, the senior support reps, having them leave this feedback gives you like valuable experience that you can use to train your model. And if you were to use Copilot, this would be a closed loop. You would have access to your own support rep feedback. You wouldn't have access to ours. And just in general, if you're integrating AI, we highly recommend just like using a feedback loop, because this basically allows for a quicker turnaround time and then getting feedback directly from users that you can act upon. From us, what we do with our data is that we have implemented kind of this chain. So we take that feedback, we upload it and visualize it using Power BI, and then we created a new role that we call a knowledge custodian. And their job is to triage the feedback. And this is actually a rotational role of about 6 months, and these are support reps, senior support reps. And we do this for a couple of reasons. One, again, they have that subject matter expertise, and then 2, they also can understand agent speak or support rep speak. They can look at responses and critically evaluate, and understand what's happening and make the change themselves, or they send it to where it needs to go. So sometimes that's the content teams. Basically, it's normally tying back to the documentation. Another thing that we had to teach support reps was how to leave good feedback on the screen. I actually have some examples directly from the comment box, and you can see on the top we have some examples of some not so good feedback, right? So frowny face, no good, wrong, not useful, bad reply, bad, not very helpful. So after telling support reps that someone is actually listening to it, it's a peer, your feedback is valued and it's actually going somewhere. That really helps get our support reps to leave good actionable feedback. And then on the bottom, I have some good examples. So we can actually refund a subscription, even if it is auto-renewed. This answer is showing that we don't have an option to refund it. Perfect. We know exactly what went wrong. We can implement that change very quickly. And the next time the support rep asks the question, the answer has changed. We actually aim for a turnaround time of about 48 hours to encourage support reps to leave feedback, because if they see the answers are changing, they're much more likely to continue to use it and leave feedback in that way. So that was a quick peek on the generative features and all of the work that we did to get our model to where it is today. Using all of this, those were kind of basically the building blocks. And it allowed us to create what we call these agentic features, which we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about. And these are similar, but basically it's just AI is taking more of the forefront. So instead of it kind of empowering the support rep, it's taking tasks off our plate now. So we're going to go through all of them. And I'm going to start with knowledge management agent, which is basically where Copilot is able to auto detect that a article or our database doesn't have an article based on the information in a case on how the support rep solved it. So it's going to detect that and then auto generate a article to add to the database here. And we're actually still piloting this in our business. It's out and released and ready to be used, but we're still integrating it in our own workflow. So I've just switched over to the pilot view right here. So let's just say, it's for the sake of the demo, that the Excel crashing issue that we saw earlier, Copilot actually didn't have any information on how to solve it. So it's the same chat transcript, but when I go to click on resolve, you can see that there's going to be a checkbox here that says propose a new knowledge article for this case. So if I go ahead and leave that checked and click on resolve, it's going to look through all of the information. So emails, chat transcripts, it could be phone transcripts, notes, anything like that. And it's going to generate me a knowledge article here based on how I solved this issue, basically harvesting that knowledge. You can see I didn't even need to do any work here. The box is directly editable, so if I did want to make any changes, add some details, I can do that. But if I like it, I can go ahead and click on Create Proposal, and then it's going to do that. What we're planning to do is we're planning to send this to a secondary approver. We just talked a lot about how much work we did into cleaning up our database. So we're a little bit wary, we're a little bit cautious. We don't want to immediately ingest a bunch of stuff into it. So that's why we're planning to send it to a secondary approver. You actually can just push it directly to the database if you'd like. But this is what the review experience looks like. For the sake of the demo, I'm going to fill out these fields really fast, but it's just going to ask me to fill out some stuff. I'm going to assign myself as the author here, and then I can go ahead and mark it as completed, and it'll go to the next stage. In this case, I am both the author and the secondary approver, so you're seeing both experiences on the same screen. But what it would do after that, it would be sent to that secondary approver. They would have a little notification on their dashboard. They can come view the article themselves, and then they can make any changes. They can make a determination if they actually want to push it to the database, but they can click on review, push it to the next stage, and then it goes in to the last phase. Go ahead here. And the very last step is actually publishing it. We're also able to set an expiration date. So maybe if this is a temporary solution, a workaround for a bug, we don't want it clogging up the database indefinitely like we did before. So I can set an expiration date, but let's just say that I like it. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on completed and publish it directly to the database now. And now, once it's been put in there, I can ask a question to Copilot regarding the issue that the support article talks about, and it's going to be able to pull from that immediately, which is really nice. So this really helps with turnaround time to when an issue first appears versus when our support reps are able to support it and feel confident on the answers they're giving customers. And you can see it's pulled directly from the article that was just created, and that's what that looks like. Oh yeah, I see a hand. Or it might have been an accidental hand as well. But that's actually perfect because that's the last feature I wanted to show off. I'm going to pass it back to Steve to talk about some of those other agentic features that I teased. But thank you all.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Arielle, so much for running those live. There's a few other features that only really work in an actual real call or chat, and I can't do one in front of you unless you want to take one with us. The Outlook cases are the hardest, though, so careful what you ask for. So we'll start with my favorite one, which is the customer intent agent. So Arielle showed how she can prompt copilots to get responses. This kind of takes it a step further by listening to a live call or watching a live chat, understanding what the problem is and suggesting questions and solutions in the moment when we need it. And so this is what dynamics will look like during an actual chat. So we can see the chat on the left right here. If it was a phone call, it would be a phone transcript right there. Case information in the middle, and then we have Copilot again on the right, and you may notice a new box that says intent-based suggestions. Keep your eye on that. And so we've asked the customer for a brief description of the problem they're facing. They respond saying they can't RDP into their VM. And you'll see again, no prompting happening here. Copilot has picked up on that. So it's correctly identifying the issue is this RDP connection issue to VM. And because it knows what the issue is, it knows that we still need to ask some more questions before we get to troubleshooting, right? Scoping questions are so important in any consumer support interaction. And so this first question states, were there any recent changes to the VM? We can, of course, simply just copy and paste that question right over. So for the first one, we will do that. And by the way, if you ever ask a customer, were there any recent changes, they will always give the same response. No, right? And so we're basically just going through a ritual at this point, right? So the customer says no. The Copilot will see that answer was captured and it says no changes right here in the upper right-hand corner. Now that's pretty cool, but here's where it gets even cooler. You don't have to ask these questions as written. Copilot can listen to a natural conversation between two humans and understand if it got the information it needs, even if we acquired that information in a different way. So to prove that, rather than ask these next two questions one by one, we will instead manually type a combined question. What was the error message? And what was the VM name? The customer will reply just one time with both bits of info, but you'll see Copilot will mine out both of those responses from the single response from the customer. So that all happens pretty fast. We've asked that manual combined question, the customer responded, and then bam, Two things happen there. We see that it collected the error message, the port, the VM name. It is now satisfied that it has all the information it needs. So it generated an automatic, well-written prompt that will produce a response, just like you saw from Arielle before. But this time, we're hopeful that it has all the information to resolve the customer's problem in one go. It's probably obvious why this is cool, but I'm still going to spell it out. I used to build support sites. I went and lived in the Philippines for a month to build up a Surface site. And by the way, if you haven't been to the Philippines, the food there is incredible. Balut, so good. Lechon, love it. Jollibees all day long. I was a little scared by the balut. I think I mentioned that twice. Balut is like a hard-boiled egg with extra protein, but don't knock it until you try it. But I can tell you from experience, it's easy to teach people how to solve problems. It's hard to teach people how to ask good scoping questions. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a 2-hour case that could have been resolved in 2 minutes if we had just asked the right question up front. And what's cool about these questions is that they do not exist in a knowledge article. These are intents. Copilot is listening to the live chats our 35,000 support engineers are having, and it's learning when Arielle gets a case like this, what kind of question does she ask? That is then passively building an intent library that it then starts to deploy to my other support engineers through this intent-based suggestions box. Now, I can, of course, go into that intent library manually and tweak and change, but it's kind of an example of how I can learn and grow just by being used in the background, which is pretty cool. The next one is the case management agent. No matter how high up I move at Microsoft, I always seem to be one level away from having a personal admin. I am notoriously bad at answering emails on time, as Arielle can probably attest to, so one day. But this agent can do some of these tasks for our support engineers. And there are so many like mind-numbing administrative tasks we have to do. I'll give you an easy example. Customer policy states that if the customer hasn't replied to us in 48 hours, we need to send a follow-up email, basically saying, hey, are you still there? Do you want to work on this case? Well, because that policy is defined, Copilot knows it. And so in this particular case, 48 hours has passed. So you'll see a suggested action pops up. It says, hey, correctly, we have 48 hours has passed. We need to send this email. Not only does it know that, it has written and drafted that email. And you can see that right here. This is not a demo environment. I literally recorded this from one of my support engineers behind me. And you can see it's using our templates, Dear Emily Anderson. It's breaking down the case number, the severity ranking, and we're good. That may seem kind of basic, but consider my support engineers are working 25 cases at the same time throughout various different stages of life cycle. This type of email, you don't write this instantly. It takes a few minutes to compile it, to put it together. So having an agent do that for you is really powerful. Additionally, it helps with closing emails. At the end of every case, I have to state what the symptom, cause, and resolution is. Well, you may have noticed from Arielle's demo, case summary already knows what the symptom, cause, and resolution is. So it should be able to do the closing notes for us, and indeed it does. When we resolve a case, normally we would have to fill in these 3 boxes that pop up, but now in our system, Copilot will automatically fill those in. That saves time, but it also raises the bar. I think we've all seen a bad note before, right? Customer had issue, I fixed issue, customer happy, right? Well, now your laziest support engineer has a really good starting point to work off of, or they can just use that. And finally, Arielle didn't talk about emails, but we do use it for emails. And many of you all, I'm sure, have templates. Well, AI can help with templates too. And so when we start a case, actually, I'm showing the wrong video here. Silly me. When we start a case, we have to do a first contact email, right? And so now a support engineer like Arielle can pull up an email and just tell Copilot, I want to do that first contact. So you'll see us type in what we call a first quality response is how we call it. And Copilot will find the correct template and auto-fill those templated features that we want to do. So you'll see it kind of pop up here, and you'll notice that the little gradient portions are where Copilot auto-filled in those pieces. I don't know why our marketing team is so obsessed with gradients lately, but that's kind of been the thing. Now, I only have a few minutes left, but I'm going to end on the newest one. This is the quality evaluation agent. We take a lot of cases at Microsoft. I get 50,000 Windows cases per hour. It takes on average about 30 minutes for a human to review one case. Just not enough humans to review all the cases I get at any given moment. So what this agent can do is an autonomous quality review of a case. So we're doing a bulk request. We've given it this evaluation criteria. This has existed long before Copilot. It's our scoring rubric that defines our Microsoft Kerr behaviors. We're telling Copilot kind of how to review this case. In about 60 seconds, I'll skip ahead. It'll review the case, do an evaluation summary on that case. And if you're watching the screen, you can probably see It looks like we didn't follow communication guidelines. We didn't mention the survey. Good heavens to Betsy, right? It's giving us some suggested actions, and it's filling out that survey for us. Now, at Microsoft, we don't do like a numeric score on cases. We do kind of a flagging system. So we're flagging that it's communicating with lengthy, didn't follow requirements, and Copilot will actually show its work too. So under About This Answer, it'll say exactly which email emitted the survey, so we can log this and do some reviews. I have a role at Microsoft called a technical advisor that reviews cases. This has saved so much time that technical advisors are starting to take cases again themselves. They are not happy about that, but it really speaks to how much efficiency is gained through this particular tool. If you're curious, about 85% of these have been accepted without any additional human input required. So today, just to kind of review, we showed you how we're using Copilot at scale in support in a few different ways. Customer facing through our bots and routing, generative through answer assist, case summary, and some of these new agentic features that we either have rolled out or in the process of rolling out live. As we look to the future, one of the biggest areas of focus for us is real-time voice translation. Really excited to see that come together next month. I appreciate everyone's time and attention. Don't leave yet, though. Jeffrey has some extra comments for you. I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Arielle. No, this has been great. So I do have a question for you guys, but before I kind of ask my question, I'd like to just kind of open it up to the audience. If anybody wants to come off of mute and ask Steve or Arielle any questions about how Microsoft uses intelligent contact centers, internally, please take the floor. All right, well, then I'm going to ask my question. So for teams that are kind of just getting started, what's the first practical step that maybe you recommend to introduce AI into their contact center operations?
I think Arielle mentioned this earlier, but case summarization is the most simple, but also the most impactful one. It does not rely on a database. I think we all know based off of meetings that AI can summarize quite well. When you're thinking about transfers, manager reviews, quality reviews, summaries at the heart of all of that, really easy to turn on. I would kind of caution when you're listening about answer assist, you can get into like a crippled state. You don't have to have your knowledge be perfect on day one. Give it a once over, but welcome your support engineers into that journey of adopting it and building those feedback loops, right? You can start sooner than you think. My recommendation.